Welcome to the Successful Athletes Podcast, where we interview successful athletes to make you faster. Today we have special guest with us, David Curtis. David, do you want to introduce yourself, saying where you're from, in terms of like where you live now? And then I guess we're going to talk about Leadville, but in particular, let's just start off with how you got into cycling. So where are you from and how'd you start with it?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. Happy
Yeah,
to be
man.
here. It really is a privilege. But yeah, I grew up pretty much in Colorado my whole life. Wasn't born here, but grew up here my whole life on the Front Range of Colorado, just maybe a couple hours south of Denver. And yeah, that's where I spent the majority of my life. Grew up playing different sports and, kicking the ball around, riding maybe a Huffy here or there. A mongoose was, if you had a mongoose, that was the bike to have. Never had one, but just rode our bikes around the block and did fun stuff like that. Honestly, cycling wasn't even like a thing. Like I didn't even know what, you could actually race bikes. We just rode bikes around for fun. So yeah, but played sports and did all that stuff throughout school. And I guess after graduating high school, I kind of, I've always loved fitness in general. So I, jumped into the gym and did the same basic routine and never got any stronger, one of those type of guys. And, played some Parks and Rec softball, stuff like that. But never really found like anything I truly loved until probably, it was 2011, maybe 2012 is when I started doing CrossFit, and I love that. I just, fell in love with doing that as an athlete and as a coach. Loved lifting weights and getting stronger and doing all that macho stuff.
Was that kind of like
But
your first intro to structure? Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned like before going to the gym, not seeing like, not improving, that sort of stuff. Was CrossFit kind of like the first introduction to more structure for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. It was one of those things that taught me so much about like how the human body works, how adaptation takes place, programming, structure, all that. That's why I really like fell in love with it, because you saw the results, and it's still a part of my life today. I still do some strength training and, do some typical CrossFit stuff. But yeah, it really opened my eyes to like understanding how, how all that works. So yeah, I did that for quite a while, but it was probably 20, I don't know, 13, somewhere in there is when I moved to Leadville because of my job, actually. I've always loved the mountains, but when it comes to like physical fitness stuff, like everyone up here was either riding bikes or running or hiking, and that was pretty much it. Which I honestly didn't really. I liked to hike, but like running and cycling just was not my thing at all. The idea of being on a bike for hours and miles or running for miles just sounded terrible to me. Like, why would anyone want to do that? So I didn't do any of that at all for the first probably 5 years. It was a small CrossFit gym um, there here at the time, and kind of still do a little bit of that. Um, but yeah, it was probably, I'd say summertime of, I guess it'd be 2018, when I kind of decided I want to try something different. And like the easy answer was to do what everyone else is doing, which was either running or biking. And definitely wasn't going to run, not yet. So I went with biking, and I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to sign up for the Leadville 100 and just, give it a go, do my best, try and get under the 12 hours just one time, and then I'll go back to my regular life. So yeah, that's kind of what I decided to do. I think it was that same year as when I went out and crewed for a friend of mine who was riding that year in 2018. And it's funny because I was crewing for him at the Twin Lakes Dam. And I was there around, I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So I was able to see like people still going like outbound and people coming inbound. And like the difference in face and body structure was completely different. I mean, people were still like, happy. I'm doing this. I'm going to finish. And then people going inbound. I mean, they were dragging. So, yeah, I crewed for a friend of mine there and watched him suffer going up Columbine and back. And I think it was in that moment when I decided, like, okay, I truly am going to give this a shot. Just the excitement in the air.
Yeah,
I know you've done
what
the
made you?
race.
Yeah, what
It's
made you pick
cool.
it up? Because like a lot of people would see that and be like, "Oh my gosh, I never want to do that." Because when they're coming down from Columbine, they look like they've seen their maker practically because it's such a long, hard climb at such high elevation, and they're only halfway through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my buddy who I was crewing for, we were waiting for him. And I think our ETA was off. We were expecting him at a certain time. He wasn't showing up. We thought maybe he crashed. Like, do we go look for him? Turned out he was just fine. All he did was go up Columbine and back, which is enough to kick you in the butt. But I don't know why I decided just to go with that race. I think just because it was in my own backyard. No other reason. Like it's local, I know the people around town. And it's I guess right now anyway, it is my hometown. So yeah, I was just up for the challenge. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Honestly, like I just felt like, yeah, I think I could do this. I don't know if I can finish. I wasn't sure at the time. My goal was just to get under the 12 hours. Um, and so, yeah, I just decided to start training and sign up for it and give it a go.
So we'll leave that as a cliffhanger because we'll get to your performance in a bit here. But it's a seriously impressive performance. That's why we're having you on this podcast here. I want to step back a little bit. First of all, what's your family and work situation so people have some context?
Yeah, so I actually work for the city of Pueblo. Like I said, it's a couple hours south of Denver. I work in their water department, which is why I live up in Leadville. I take care of a lot of their water management stuff. I take care of Clear Creek Reservoir, which is just south of Columbine, like 10 minutes south. Run a lot of their ditches and stuff like that. So yeah, Pueblo's still kind of my hometown, but Leadville's still kind of my hometown, kind of splitting the two towns, the two communities. But yeah, I am married, 11 years. I better get that right. Yeah, 11 years this past June. Have 4 kids, all under 10 years old.
Ooh.
So yeah, my hands are full. All my training I do, at least indoor, is before 7 a.m. It's the only time to get stuff in.
So what time do you usually start training in the mornings?
So right now I'm doing most of my rides outside. But especially over the winter when I am on the trainer, I try and be up by 4 on the bike by 4:30. I mostly do the high intensity or high volume plan. So a lot of 2-hour rides. So I try and be off by 6:30 or 7 before the kids wake up. There'll be times where I'm on the trainer and I'm digging so deep. I got my head down and my eyes closed, not knowing one of my kids woke up and is standing right next to me. And I open my eyes. I'm like, ah.
So how did you? That's the thing that a lot of people struggle with is the early morning stuff, even if it's high intensity or not. But first, how did you get used to doing the early morning workouts? Was that part of your routine prior to this? Were you already an early riser and were you doing CrossFit, for example, early in the morning, or did you have to invent that habit and create it?
Yeah, no, I'm not a morning person at all. I try to be, and I kind of am now because I forced myself to, but still by nature, not at all. I just did it because, like I said, that was the only time to do it. And, I'm pretty motivated, I guess, and determined to progress and to get my workout in. I don't like skipping workouts. I don't even like skipping like the recovery stuff, like, oh, I'm going to get slower if I don't get this recovery right in. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty diligent on that stuff. I'm sure I'm lazy in other areas of life, but when it comes to training, just got to get it done, I guess.
You mentioned that you're pretty motivated. Has that been like a characteristic that just like even when you were a kid, were you motivated to be like, sort of like the hard work, diligent sort of thing? Or was that something that you found later on? And I guess what does motivate you to do that? Like, why are you doing it all?
Yeah,
The belt buckle's cool and all, but I'm sure it was not just because you needed a new belt buckle, right? What's your
yeah,
why
yeah.
behind it?
I think that kind of grows over time. I'm sure I was motivated in some areas, when I was younger, but I definitely think that's something that grows. The competitiveness has always been there. So, whether I'm doing a CrossFit WOD or a bike race or, playing softball with the guys, that competitiveness is always there. But as far as the motivation goes, what gets me up, what gets me going, I think that grows over time. One of the things is my kids, I would say. I think being a father changes your perspective on life, and I want them to see me, not that I don't want them to see me fail, but because people fail all the time. But I want them to see, me as a hard worker. I mean, a lot of areas in life, not just, being on the bike, but I want them to see that nature in me. I think especially now more than ever, it's so important to look at future generations and whatnot. So yeah, my kids, one of them. As far as being on the bike, I think honestly, I kind of feel like the odd man out at times because being in a Colorado mountain town, the typical mountain biker is typical white person, and I'm not that person. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that motivation to be respected and be I don't know, just be that person that fits in as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't, my goal isn't to be the fastest person on the bike or the best mountain biker, but I do want to be the best version of myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that that aspect of it, like with Colorado mountain towns and just mountain towns in general tend to be they tend to be white and they tend to be of like a particular socioeconomic status, right? Like it's just like it's very one-sided, I guess, is the point. Was
Yeah.
that like? So I don't know because I grew up, not I grew up being a white male in America, so I don't really have this same perspective as you. Like I could look up to other people and do that sort of stuff, and I would see people that looked like me, or the culture would be familiar to my culture, that sort of thing. Were there any, or do you experience any challenges in that regard? And what I'm really trying to get at is what can we do as all of us to like make the sport as inclusive as possible?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough question. I think there's a lot of layers to that, but personally, I don't know if I'd say I feel a ton of pressure. I don't know if that's the right word. Just because I don't know, I'm not easily offended. My circle of influence around me are people that I ride with all the time. Same group of guys that I go to church with, same group of guys that I hang out with on the weekends. So, I don't feel a whole lot of discrimination there. But, there is definitely that aspect of diversity, or lack thereof. I don't think I've ever seen a black or a brown, I mean, a brown maybe, but definitely not a black person at the starting line of a mountain bike race. I don't know if I've ever seen another black person on a mountain bike, period.
Hmm.
So I definitely, feel like the outcast at times, and it's definitely a real thing. But I don't know. I think it's important. Let's see, what am I trying to say? I think that, there definitely is this social bias, this stereotype within the cycling community and within every facet of life, to be honest. And I honestly believe that both parties, feed into that. Both, white people and brown people and black people and all alike. I personally have felt like, oh, I'm not supposed to do this because I'm not white. I'm not supposed to mountain bike or ski or hunt or hike. But over time, as I started to step outside of those comfort zones, I realized that like I myself is part of that problem too. Does that make sense? So I think it's important, like if I can just be a small part of that change, I think that's huge. Like give people the chance to respect you, because oftentimes they do. You just got to give them that opportunity. But as far as like what the community can do, I think that's a bit complex. I listened to that podcast last week with the is it the Black Foxes? Is that
The Black
name?
Foxes, yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love like their mission statement, that something on the lines of, it's not just cycling, but we want to get people of all color outside, whether it's hiking or fishing or whatever it is. Because I can relate to that. I love to bike, but I also love to hunt and I love to fish. I love to do all those things. And if I could somehow, be a part in making, a difference in getting people outside, people, like myself, I think that's key. I think there's ways where we can, simple things like get bikes into the hands of people that are less fortunate, whatever that is, used bikes or old bikes or whatever. I definitely think there are little tangible things that can be done. It's just a matter of, taking the necessary steps to make that happen.
Yeah, chances are if we're in a position to be riding our bike, we're in this position to also help in one regard. Like you said, whether it's making access a little bit easier, whether it's being, just inviting to folks or so then they don't, because I'm sure that sort of thing is in the back of your head, kind of saying that like you said, that you felt like an outcast at times, that you feel like an outcast at times. And there's no better way to probably dispel that than to make sure everybody feels welcomed, and just as another member of the same exact community that you are. So, yeah, all stuff that we can do for sure. Kind of like dovetailing from that, you had this background where you were like a typical kid. You played sports, but you weren't like some sort of like, athletic phenom. Certainly you weren't big into endurance sports. So let's get into like when you first started riding, where your benchmark was. You told me this story about like where you went riding once you got your bike. First of all, what kind of bike did you get? And then where'd you go on that benchmark ride, so to speak? Tell that story. That's a good one.
Yeah. So when I first, decided to give this a try, I actually went out. I searched around. I did a bunch of research on like what kind of bike to get, and I was under the impression that I needed to get myself a hardtail because, they're faster, better power transfer to that rear wheel. So, like a lot of the record times on the Leadville course was done on a hardtail. So I was like, I guess I need a hardtail. So I went out and bought me a bike. This was probably like, I don't know, September, October of that year. It was a Cannondale, and I could talk more about that bike later, but I ended up selling it because it just didn't work for me. I was so unskilled on the bike, like adding that layer of like not having a full suspension just made matters so much worse.
Right.
So that bike beat the heck out of me. So I learned my lesson that way. But that was my first bike and my very first ride, like quote unquote training ride. I was so pumped up. I rode up St. Kevin's, and I didn't even ride to like the road. I drove my truck down there, and it's only like, I live in town, so I don't know why I didn't ride to there, but I was like, I'm not going to ride any further. I'll throw it in my truck. And I rode down to the bottom of Kevin's and started riding up, and I don't know. I don't think I could make it maybe 100 yards or so. I still have the notes in my phone on how many times I had to stop going up that climb because I'm so like diligent on like, okay, and I think I had to stop 10 times. I want to say 9 or 10 times.
Wow.
So my goal was like, okay, next time I do that climb, I'm going to only stop in 8 times. Like that was my thought process at the time. So yeah, going up St. Kevin's was terrible. I thought I was going to die. I, I thought I could at least like make it to that's the first, for people that know that's the first climb, of the course, the Leadville course. So I gave that a go. It was an epic failure. And I think it was in that moment when I realized like I need some structured training. Winter was coming too, so I knew I had to do something else.
So that's the benchmark. Being like, the basically like off the couch is probably appropriate in this case. It's not that you were like unfit and just a couch dweller or something, but this was like you're brand new to riding, more or less. This was the
Yeah,
new
absolutely.
thing. You knew how to pedal a bicycle, but more above that, not much else.
No, not nothing else at all.
So was that discouraging to you in the beginning, or did it just, like you said, did it just turn into motivation to find structure and you just went with that?
Yeah, it was both. It was discouraging because I thought, I was more fit than that.
Right.
But at the same time, that will to like get better and get faster. And I knew I would and I could. How much faster could I get, was unknown. But, the excitement of, okay, like it's time to train and to get faster and, learn some skills was definitely in the back of my head. And I think that's what really got me going.
So how'd you find TrainerRoad after that? This is the marketer in me is curious about that. And then let's walk through the training process. We already know when you trained every day, but so how'd you find TrainerRoad? And then let's lay out the plan and see how you went through.
Yeah. So like I said, I knew I needed some structured training. And knew I needed to ride a lot indoors because, in the wintertime, it's not really that possible.
Yeah, Leadville's extremely snowy for people that don't know. It's cold and high elevation, lots of snow.
Yeah, and the snow doesn't come off until like June.
Yeah.
Like right now. So a lot of time spent indoors over the winter. So again, did some research. My thought of an indoor bike was either like the Airdyne assault bike that we have in a CrossFit gym, or one of those like big, what do you call those bikes in the gym with the big flywheel, the spin bikes, I guess.
Yep.
So that's what I thought I was going to get. But after doing some research, I found out like what a trainer was and what a smart trainer was and how it can control your resistance straight from your phone. So did some research there, bought a used smart trainer. And then from there, found out that you can run some programs off of this trainer through your phone. So started to do some research there and do some comparison there. TrainerRoad was a no-brainer for me. I just loved the structure to it. No offense to any other programs, but I didn't really care about flashy stuff or, any of that, music that pumps you up. I just cared about the numbers. I'm so data driven. I wanted to see on paper, like what that progression looks like, what those intervals look like and how that adaptation happens both through the program and how that would directly relate to my body. So, bought a year subscription to TrainerRoad at the time and just fell in love. Honestly, I still love training indoors, like hitting those power targets still to this day. It's like so fulfilling. I love riding outside too, but there's something about like it's like hitting a new 1 rep max back squat in the gym or something like that.
Yeah.
I got TrainerRoad. My first ramp test, I think that was November of that year, 2018. And I think my score was 156, I want to say, my threshold, which at the time I was so I wouldn't say upset, but I was I was listening, like binge listening to all the TrainerRoad podcasts at the time and hearing about like 300-watt FTPs for like an average Joe is fast, and
Yeah.
400 and above for pros is fast. So here I am coming in at 156, and I was so like sad about that.
We can be better with
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Well, the thing is, like, I felt like, yeah, maybe I don't have much endurance, but a 20-minute ramp test, that's like a typical CrossFit WOD. And I feel like I was strong at the time. I was, I think, 195 pounds at the time. So I thought I'd at least have a decent FTP, but that wasn't the case at
It's
all.
all about specificity, right? Like it's whatever you're working, it kind of
Yeah.
goes from there. So 156 FTP, granted that's up at 10,000 feet because you're in Leadville. So that would be roughly to
Hmm.
about 181 FTP if you're down at sea level, roughly. So that puts you at 1.8 watts per kilogram up at Leadville, and then roughly, I think that's where you started. That's like the starting point. And then what plans did you follow throughout the whole thing? And then did you have to make any adjustments, or did you have any unexpected challenges with that whole process?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I'd recommend this to anyone right now, but
Okay.
I immediately jumped into sweet spot high volume. And like I said, I was 195 pounds. I immediately started eating as clean as possible. I was intermittent fasting because I wanted to drop weight at the same time. So it was a struggle, like I'm not gonna lie. Putting in 2-hour days every morning and all while being in a caloric deficit all winter was not fun. But like I said, I was motivated. I was determined to, be as fast as I can possibly be. I hate looking back and thinking, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. So I was like, I had tunnel vision at the time. So yeah, jumped immediately into sweet spot, and then went from there to I guess it was sustained power
Yep.
build, high volume, and then jumped into the Century Plan, high volume again, and that would have put me. I think it was probably springtime around that time, and I had dropped, oh, gee, in 35 pounds maybe. So I was weighing like
Wow.
160-ish, yeah, 165.
And was the majority of that like
So
muscle mass that you had accrued through like the CrossFit training, or did you lose body fat as well? Do you know?
I lost everything, Jonathan, man. My watch, I had to drop like 2 or 3 links on my watch. My
Wow.
wife thought I was, fizzling away on her. You can see it in my face and everything. Now I just look normal. But yeah, I think a little bit of everything. I definitely lost some muscle mass because a lot of my benchmark strength stuff went down, but not as much as I thought. In terms of pound for pound, I was actually a little bit stronger in the springtime with things like my, squats and deadlifts and stuff like that. So it went down, but when you relate it to my body weight at the time, I didn't get that much weaker. So yeah, I want to say, like you said, I think I was 1.8 watts per kilo. And I want to say maybe not the spring, but come race day, I almost doubled it, I think.
Yeah, I think you're at
I went
3.6.
from, yeah,
Super impressive.
3.6. Yeah, all that weight loss. So then, I still made those gains. And I knew it was possible to do that simply because like I was so new to the sport. I knew even if I'm losing weight, I knew I'd have big gains just because I'm so new, and I wouldn't, plateau right away. So yeah, that's what I did. Got as fast as I can possibly be, lost as much weight as I can possibly lose. Then springtime, summertime rolls around, and actually bought a Scott Spark at the time, around that time, from a friend of mine, because I realized the hardtail wasn't going to work. So started training outside mostly at that time. And yeah, learned how to ride a bike outside as opposed to just being stationary inside,
It's a
which
different
had its
world.
struggles as well. Oh, completely different.
Yeah.
my training partner friend, um, he's kind of like you, ex motocross guy, and he's so skilled. And so he taught me a lot. He's still like way faster than I am, at least descending. We're both about even climbing, but yeah. So picked his brain as much as I can, and learned how to ride outside.
That's impressive. So you went up to a 260 FTP. That's at 10,000 feet, which would put you just over 300 down at sea level, roughly. So, and that's in basically in the space of 8 months. So that's high, and you followed high volume all throughout with all three of those training phases, right?
Yep.
Which is really impressive. So that's basically what Plan Builder would lay out for you if you were going through. And of course, it would adjust the durations of everything and change it up depending on the time that you have. But it's like, that's super, super impressive. And yes, like the training is key to doing it. And you said you needed structure, but that's like hugely commendable to all the dedication that you went through, because it's a big shift. Like endurance training had to have been a big change for you. Like, did you find it? You mentioned that it was hard to do it in the mornings, everything else, but what other obstacles did you come across in your training that made it difficult for you to carry on? That you end up, clearly you pushed through them, but what did you come across?
Yeah, I was always tired because I'd ride in the mornings, early in the mornings. Then I'd actually commute to work too, which is only a couple miles downhill in the morning. Going back home, it was uphill, so that was a little bit harder. But yeah, I was always tired. I had to shift my schedule around, try and get to bed like 8, 9 o'clock, which isn't great for family life. I would say, because that just shortens my time with them. So that definitely was a struggle. But my wife, she's awesome, so she was all in as I was all in. Always tired, always hungry, which was in part in just not eating as much as I normally would eat. But on the flip side to that, I was eating super clean, basically following a pretty strict paleo diet. And even though I was hungry a lot, I actually felt pretty good. My body really adjusted to that type of diet and that type of lifestyle. I was still lifting a little bit in the evenings just to try and keep my strength on up as much as possible.
How did you
But yeah,
adjust
I
that?
mean,
Did you back it down in terms of your strength training? Like from where were you before endurance training with your strength training in terms of like how much work you did to what you did once
mhm.
you actually started incorporating the training plan?
Yeah, I was at the gym. I was a gym rat, so I was there every day doing that stuff. And when I started cycling in the mornings, I would probably still hit the gym maybe 3 times tops. Um, I'd still coach a little bit in the evenings, so I'd go and coach a class, and then just you know do a quick squat session or throw in some deadlifts or something like that. It was more just maintenance. I wasn't trying to get any stronger. I knew I wasn't going to. But in my head at the time, I just felt like my body is making this huge shift from strength to endurance. So I wanted to still like remind my body that like still want to be strong. And yeah, I don't know how well that worked, but yeah, I still felt you know fairly strong throughout.
So a couple areas I want to cover before we get into your race day of Leadville. Number one, on the so we know that you optimized your equipment. You went for the full suspension bike. It was the better choice for you. In terms of skills, was there anything in particular that really helped you accelerate your learning curve with learning the mountain bike skills that you needed for the race?
Yeah, my biggest weakness was descending. Man, I rode my brakes all the time. Like I didn't know what not squeezing the brakes was. So that and like cornering was a huge issue for me, and still kind of is. So I just tried to hone in on that as much as possible. And I try to do some simple, figure eight stuff like that out in the driveway. Just little things like that to try and help, try and strengthen those weaknesses while still maintaining my strength, which at the time was just pure fitness, just climbing. Like I can climb, especially anything smooth, like a fire road, anything like that. Like I had no problems. But anytime you throw in some loose terrain, anytime you throw in some steep descents or, fast cornering, I didn't know what to do there. So I just spent as much time outside as possible, to be honest. I knew I wasn't going to get, I wasn't going to be perfect at those skills, but I just wanted to feel comfortable, I guess, at the time. So I just spent as much time as I can outside, especially on that course. I wanted to know, what was coming up, what I needed to do to prepare myself, for the course itself. So yeah, just right outside.
Putting in your reps, right? Yeah, just making sure that you're getting the time that you need in that environment. And with Leadville in particular, it's often like, I think that nutrition plays a massive role in that race. Any long race, it does. How did you train yourself going from a paleo diet? How did you train yourself to take in nutrition on the bike? Because it's also not very common in the middle of a CrossFit WOD to choke down some food, right? Like it's like that's not really part of it.
Not at all.
Yeah. So how did you train yourself to eat on the bike? What did you end up eating? And then we can probably transition right into Leadville from there, from what you did on race day.
Yeah, so that was tricky because, all winter long, I didn't eat on the bike simply because I was trying to lose weight. So I didn't even train myself, like my gut, to take in gels or any of that liquid nutrition or anything like that. Not until, it's probably late spring when I realized, okay, I'm at like my race weight. Like this is where I want to be. It's time to like start training my gut as much as possible. So try different things. Wasn't a huge fan of like the gels, but I didn't mind I ended up using the Morton products for the race, mainly the liquid nutrition, and then I took in a few gels, some of those waffle like cracker things that they make, but primarily it was all mostly in the bottle. And for race day, I think I ended up taking in it was probably about 20 ounces of water an hour, 400 calories an hour, and about 80 to 90, at times upward to 100 grams of carbs per hour. And I wasn't quite sure how my stomach was going to handle that because I haven't, I started to train my stomach for that shorter rides, but never anything like that. So I had no idea how my body would respond, but I really didn't have any issues. The only issue I had with eating was at one point, I thought I might want some real food. So at one of the feed zones, I had my wife give me it was like a peanut butter and honey sandwich. And FYI, peanut butter is not a good thing to take in when you're riding. It took me like 10 minutes to get half that sandwich down because it was so dry.
Yeah.
And I was trying to climb and like breathe through my nose because I couldn't get any air in my mouth. So that was like a disaster. But for the most part, I stuck with, the nutrition in the bottle and really didn't have any issues at all. I finished the day somewhat empty on fumes, but that was kind of the plan, kind of the goal. I didn't want to stop at Carter. I just wanted to blow through that and sip on the little bit of water that I had left and finish strong. So
your goal,
nutrition was good, went well.
It's impressive and smart of you to like make that an observation beforehand, be like, all right, I'm where this is a fine weight that I need to be for race weight. Now it's time to start focusing in on the nutrition, dialing in. So that's smart.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal was to go sub 12, right? That was like the main goal.
That was the original plan.
Yeah. Did that change leading up to it?
It did, only because I had no idea where I was until the 100 was actually my second race. I ended up doing the Silver Rush in July because I thought, well, maybe I'll give that a shot. If I can move up a corral or two, that'd be great. Because at the time I was slotted for the very last white corral. So I did that race. And that race went a lot better than I thought. That's when I realized, okay, I'm faster than I thought. And under 12 is more than doable. And sub-9 is, I'm borderline in sub-9 at that time, because I ended up looking at racers who finished around me in that race for the 50. And like I said, I'm such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. So I like took all the 20 riders that finished around me in that race, looked at their history, see if any of them did Leadville. So I looked back at their Leadville times, and they're anywhere between like 8:50 and 9:20. So I thought, if I'm close to these guys, then I'm probably close to that sub-9. So I just went for it. When I started to plan and prep and type out everything I wanted for my cruise, I just went with the finish of 8:59:59. That was what I had down. Here's where I'm going to be at this time. Here's what I want. Here's what questions I want you to ask me. I had everything labeled and bags. It was
Smart.
down to the T.
Yeah. So and then your family supported you, or did you have others on the course supporting you? And then which aid stations were they at for you?
Yeah, friends and family. My buddy that I ride with all the time, his family came out, so we kind of shared aid stations, which worked well, but we didn't realize how close we were in time. So we got to each aid station pretty much at the same time every time.
Wow.
So that was kind of a mess. Like, oh, here are both of our riders, and trying to take care of both of us at the same time. But we were still pretty fast. We had 2 feed zones, one at Pipeline and then one at the Twin Lakes alternate.
Yeah, that's a smart one to be at, I think. Better than Twin Lakes.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yep.
Yeah. So both I stopped, total of 4 times, I guess, both inbound and outbound. Like I said, I had everything there that I wanted. Stuck with the plan with the hydration, nutrition, salt pills. I had everything, written down, and I just stuck with it regardless of how I felt.
That's impressive.
I knew what I needed to do and went with it.
Way to go. So your time is 8:23:13. Like, you blew your time out of the water. And for anybody, I know that 9 is known as the big belt buckle time, but going sub-9 is extremely hard. The fact that you did this in like 9 months is just incredible. It just speaks to the importance of diligence, meetings, proper structure, right? But like the diligence key of like not missing workouts, like you said, just you don't miss. Like you make sure that you hit your marks. It's got to be key. What did you learn on race day that surprised you? Like, were there any hard times that you came across throughout the day at Leadville?
Yeah, I actually learned the most from the Silver Rush. I quickly learned that it takes a long time to ride 50 miles, so there's no need to sprint at the sound of the gun. So I learned, a lot from that race, and applied that to, the 100, and, raced within my means and stuck with, what I knew I was capable of. I really slowed myself down going up Columbine. And it worked out well because I was actually on pace just barely under 9 when I reached the Pipeline inbound. Mm-hmm. I think I made up the most time from that point back to town going up Sugarloaf. That's why I passed the most people. And I really think, it was because I stayed within my means prior to that point. I knew from listening to you guys and Fatty's podcasts and, as much information that I can get, I knew that that's where most people start to blow up, going up power line and going over Sugarloaf. So I tried to save as much, in the tank as I can for that. And that's kind of where I put on the gas. So yeah, and I just learned like race day brings out the best in you and people, I didn't know what I was capable of until you just get out there and race. So, if there's one thing I can share with other people is to, sign up, do something, just getting outside and riding is fun, but, signing up for a race and doing something like that, really makes you realize what you're capable of and what you can accomplish, because it brings out, the best in you. You enter this state of mind where like you feel like you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's awesome, man. Way to go on putting out that awesome goal and sticking with it. Some key things that I find in your experience. Number one is that like you relied upon structure. Number two, that you were absolutely diligent. That's the biggest factor right there. Who cares how good the plan is if you aren't diligent? And then on top of that as well, like you collected as much information as possible. You listening to our podcast, of course, like with Nate's experience and everything else, and us talking about what we screwed up that day, and also listening to Eldon's podcast. I mean, you're lucky in the sense that Leadville itself has a lot of information about it. Also, a lot of misinformation too from folks. But so getting as much information, and then on race day, having a good plan and sticking to it. It's simple stuff, but really making that simple stuff happen every day is the hard part, and you did it. And that's the impressive thing. That's why I think you're so successful. So way to go, man. It's super impressive. You came up and introduced yourself after the race. And when you told me your story, I was like, because I was pretty foggy brained after that long day too, because I had just finished, and I was like, and Coach Chad was with me when we were walking away. He was like, did he really say that he started 9 months ago? And I was like, I don't know. Like it didn't compute, So it's just massively impressive. For anybody that's done Leadville, they'll know how fast an 8:23 is. So way to go, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
What advice would you have just in general, other than, of course, like, anything else that you've already provided, but is there any additional advice that you want to give to somebody that is either prepping for Leadville in particular or some big event like that? What advice would you give folks?
Yeah, kind of what you said, put in the work, make sure you're resting, recovering, follow some structured training. I really don't think you need to, and I know you preach this too, but get out there and do 10-hour days or anything like that. Just focus on increasing that fitness. Just doing as much, research as you can. If you could get up to this elevation or even close, do it, because it's not the same. I'm fortunate enough to live here, so I'm kind of used to it, and it's not that big of a deal, but I know it's a big deal, especially for those that are coming from super low elevation like sea level. Try and get up as high as you can and know what that feels like. That, and I think it's important to have, people that, surround you, whether it's friends or family or, books that you read or people that you follow that influence you, to give you sort of that extra to kind of, motivate you and keep you accountable for your goals and your dreams.
Awesome. Way to go, man. Super inspiring stuff. Also, you've entered the Leadville 100 challenge, the 100K challenge that they have right now. And you are absolutely crazy because you're riding Leadville, I think, every week, which is just nuts. So you're riding the Leadville course on the weekends. Super impressive. Have you learned anything about the course after riding it this many times that you'd want to share with us?
Yeah. First of all, that was not my idea. That was my crazy friend's idea. The same friend that thought of Everesting on Columbine, which he succeeded and I failed.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so yeah, he comes up with all the crazy ideas and I just go with it. So yeah, once a week we did the math, and if you do it every week for the 8 weeks of the challenge, it comes right out to about 100,000 feet of gain.
Phew.
Um, it's fun, but every time, man, every time I'm pedaling up Columbine, I think, why am I doing this? This is stupid. Um, but yeah, we like it because, honestly, you learn something new about the course every time you ride it. I mean, down to the like rocks, oh, I know where that rock is. I'm avoiding that line. I'm going with this line today. So, course familiarity is a big thing. So hopefully I can, take that into next year and be able to ride the course with my eyes closed. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, seriously, right? Well, that's awesome. David, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Are you on social media or anything?
I don't do a whole lot of social media. I'm on Strava. You can just search me out, David Curtis. You can find me by seeing the Leadville 100 course within the last 7 days. If you see that, then that's me.
That's awesome. All right, cool. We'll put the link down to David's Strava profile in the description below. Thanks a bunch, man. And thanks everybody for listening to this one or tuning in on YouTube as well. Once again, you can subscribe to this podcast and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. They come out every Monday. And if you want to be on the Successful Athletes podcast, first, just send us an email at jonathan@trainerroad.com and let us know the key criteria we're looking for, how you've used TrainerRoad to accomplish whatever success you have accomplished, and that doesn't have to be a win or anything else. And then just let us know the story behind it. And it'd be exciting to have you on. So thanks again, man. And hopefully we'll see you at Leadville. Obviously not this year, but hopefully next year. It'd be fun. I think that some folks from the office are planning on doing it, and I'm totally planning on being there to crew. So that'll be a blast, and hopefully we'll see you then. And yeah, thanks for the inspiration. I want to go train after listening to this. So thanks, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Talk to you soon.